to various persons was halted by the then South Nyanza District Plot Allocation Committee on grounds that the government had not acquired the said parcels of land. The petitioners claim to have lodged a complaint with the Minister of Lands and were confirmed to be the legal owners of the said land. The petitioners further affirm that in 2003, the Awendo Town Council embarked on evicting landowners without any notice and orders from any court on grounds that the said parcels of land had been compulsorily acquired by the government. Honorable members, the petitioners consequently took legal action in 2005 by suing the Awendo Town Council at High Court in Kisii, which ruled in their favor. Unfortunately, the council failed to produce acquisition and compensation documents to the court as directed. Further efforts by the petitioners to compel Awendo Town Council to produce acquisition and compensation documents were thwarted as the appeal was dismissed and directed to the district land registrar to issue title deeds to the original landowners. Honorable members, the petitioners further state that the Awendo Town Council, having been dissatisfied by the judgment of the Court of Appeal, applied for certificate to appeal its decision at the Supreme Court, which was dismissed by the Supreme Court. The petitioners therefore pray that the National Assembly engages the Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development to ensure that the petitioners are fully compensated for the lands they lost due to illegal allocation by the defunct Awendo Town Council. Having established that the matters raised in the petition is well within the authority of the House, and further that the matters raised are not pending before any court of law, constitutional or legal body, I hereby commit the petition to the Public Petitions Committee for consideration pursuant to Standing Order 208A. The committee is required to consider the petition and report its findings to the House and to the petitioners in accordance with Standing Order 2272. I thank you. Honorable members, as usual, if there are any interested members to comment on the petition, I give you 30 minutes to do so. Go to intervention. As usual, the screen is full. I don't know if it's about the petition. John Buddy, is it about
Mr. Speaker, it yes. May not be relevant to this particular petition. I don't know whether to raise it slightly later.
Yes, if it is.
I have a point of order on petitions generally.
This is on the petition.
So my point of order is on petitions generally.
General, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, Mr. Speaker, thank you for granting me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, there is a matter that I think is of concern that may require your intervention in terms of giving direction regarding public petitions. Mr. Speaker, I am aware that Standing Order 208 gives the responsibility of public petitions to the Petitions Committee. But Mr. Speaker, I think we need to be clear on the extent to which the public petitions can be dealt with this committee in a way that it doesn't interfere with the functions and responsibilities of other committees. I have a case in point, Mr. Speaker, and this is something that is of public information today, that there was a public petition that came from one Stephen Mtoro regarding the expenditures towards the tail end of the previous regime.
Yes.
And that matter was actually committed to the Public Petitions Committee. However, Mr. Speaker, my concern is with the reported case of how this matter is being handled. Why do I raise this matter with you, Mr. Speaker? If I look at Standing Order 205 on the functions and responsibility that is assigned to my committee, the committee I chair, that is the Public Accounts Committee. And Mr. Speaker, if you could just allow me to read. On Standing Order 205-2, that the Public Accounts Committee shall be responsible for the examination of the accounts showing the appropriations of the sum voted by the House to meet the public expenditure and of such other accounts laid before the House as the committee may think fit. Mr. Speaker, my concern here is the Petitions Committee will deal with this matter. And I can see they have already started interrogating the expenditure, who was liable, who was responsible, how the monies were given out. Now, the Petitions Committee may end up giving a report to this House with recommendations, and then we dispose of it. And then the Office of the Auditor General will audit these expenditures. And once the audit is done, the report is laid on the table of the House and will be seized of by Public Accounts Committee, in which case then we will again be looking at these accounts and summoning witnesses and getting information. And we may end up arriving at a different resolution from what the Petitions Committee. So the questions that I have, Mr. Speaker, are two. Chances that this House may end up with two different or contrasting positions on the same matter. Two, on a matter like this, Mr. Speaker, before you investigate an expenditure, you need the Office of the Auditor General to audit. If there is no audit by the Office of the Auditor General, how then do you proceed to investigate a matter? And Mr. Speaker, I really belabored this point because I know chances are that politics may end up at play. As the chair of Public Accounts Committee, I would be the last person to allow politics to cloud my work and responsibility. But we run the risk of politicizing a very serious matter of public expenditure if we don't follow it methodically by allowing first the Office of the Auditor General to audit these expenditures and then bring a report to the House and hold all those officers who are culpable to account. So, Mr. Speaker, my concerns were those two, that to what extent should the Public Petitions Committee go when it comes to public expenditure, and two, whether we can continue as a House to investigate a matter of public expenditure without the Auditor General being given the first bite at it by auditing it and reporting to us professionally so that this matter is dealt with properly. Because, Mr. Speaker, we are not experts, actually, as members of Parliament. We rely on experts who are who is the Office of the Auditor General. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority on the same points. On the same point raised by the Honourable Mbadi.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And I don't want to contribute to the petition. I want to respond to the issue that has been raised by the Honourable John Mbadi on the processing of petitions. And indeed, the issues he raises are pertinent. But, Honourable Speaker, we must be careful that we are not seen in a way to be curtailing the work of any committee that has already begun business, because all committees of this House, Honourable Speaker, function and work on behalf of the House. And whether the Public Petitions Committee has a petition before it, and even the petition you've just read, Honourable Speaker, I believe will most likely end in the Public Petitions Committee. And it is a new committee, Honourable Speaker, and therefore there are issues that we will continue to polish up even within our standing orders, so that we create boundaries. But, Honourable Speaker, the issue raised by Honourable John Mbadi is already, as he says, out there in the public domain. And we must ask ourselves, Honourable Speaker, when the Public Petitions Committee had that particular petition by the Honourable, well, he's the Honourable Stephen Mutoro, because he's a spirited public advocate on matters to do with consumer welfare, Honourable Speaker. When Stephen Mutoro sent that petition to the House and it was committed to the Public Petitions That, if I remember well, should have been either at the beginning of December or in November last year. And you remember, Honorable Speaker, the House went on recess soon after, and committees were even yet to be inducted. And it is only in this session of Parliament that committees have now really begun working on petitions and all issues that are before those committees. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, as we speak, the matter was properly before the Public Petitions Committee. But that does not in any way exclude the Public Accounts Committee to considering issues that will be raised by an audit report as at when the Auditor General does his audit of those expenditures. And, Honorable Speaker, it must not also be lost on us that already Stephen Mutoro sought to have a petition to look into expenditures paid out under Article 223 of the Constitution. That matter, Honorable Speaker, last week we did approve the supplementary appropriations bill, which has already been accepted into the Supplementary Appropriations Act. And out of that supplementary appropriations bill, Honorable Speaker, you remember payments to the tune of about 120 billion shillings have indeed been approved by this House. But payments, I think, if I remember, it was about 10 or 14 billion, were disapproved by the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and subsequently the House agreed on the disapproval of those payments. And therefore, those naturally, at some point, will end up before the Public Accounts Committee, since they were disapproved. And I know, Honorable Speaker, the events before the Public Petitions Committee yesterday jolted the country. Because, Honorable Speaker, when I stood in my place here about 2 weeks ago, and I said that this country was being looted dry in the run-up to the last election, people thought we were politicking. And, Honorable Speaker, we must not, of course we are politicians, but we must not run scared of dealing with issues that are pertinent to the livelihood of the Kenyan people, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it is true that the Public Accounts Committee can and will only consider matters that will be investigated, to be investigated as at when an audit is done by the Office of the Auditor General. But, Honorable Speaker, we know the Office of the Auditor General will carry out their audits at the end of the financial year. These are issues and payments that were made in this financial year. Therefore, if we were to wait until June for the Office of the Auditor General to carry out an audit, or for the Public Accounts Committee to ask the Auditor General to carry out a special audit, because they can also do that, and I am not aware whether the Honorable John Buddy has requested the Office of the Auditor General to carry out a special audit report on these payments. I hear him saying he has, which is good. But by the time the Auditor General concludes his report and now it becomes a matter to be investigated, then, Honorable Speaker, that may take some time. But already, and we are a House that should be addressing issues that are of concern to the Kenyan people. Already the the Public Petitions Committee has allowed Kenyans to get information, as was availed to Kenyans yesterday by Madam Margaret Nyakango, the Controller of Budget, and divulge information that is important for Kenyans to know. So that, Honorable Speaker, when many of us assert that there are people in the last regime who are on a looting spree, and we are often told, please don't tell us that those people are stealing. Do something about it. Honorable Speaker, what needs to be done is what this Public Petitions Committee is doing. It is what the Honorable John Buddy, through his Public Accounts Committee, will later do. And also, Honorable Speaker, I'm sure you're aware, because I've had a discussion with the Chair of the Finance Committee and the Chair of the ICT Committee, the Honorable KJ. They are already working towards having a joint committee to also look at the policy issues and other issues that led to the payments, especially of the 6.1 billion shillings that were looted on the pretext that we were buying back government shareholding of Telkom Kenya, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I just want to caution my good friend John Buddy, without in any way imputing any improper motive on his raising the issue now, that we must be cautious not to be seen to be curtailing the work of the Public Accounts Committee, especially after what was disclosed and made public yesterday. And we must encourage other public officers, Honorable Speaker, that they have the protection of this House and committees of this House to avail information and furnish members of this House and by extension members of the public on all details of the theft and looting that was carried out in the wee hours of the last regime, Honorable Speaker. Because when you heard the other day the Deputy President assert that money was being ferried to people's homes using helicopters, Kenyans imagine this is fiction. It is not fiction. No wonder, Honorable Speaker, you saw the desperation that was there to interfere with the elections and the election results, Honorable Speaker. And maybe, Honorable Speaker, is also the other reason why now you see a belated attempt, and very belated, to try and intimidate government to bring back some of those subsidies that were utilized to loot from the Kenyan people. Because these people, Mr. Speaker, never get satisfied. They were fed by the fuel subsidy, they were fed by Telkom Kenya, they were fed through the maize subsidy, and, Honorable Speaker, we must forgive them because you may never satisfy everybody's greed. But we as a House must stand and allow all our committees to work in line, because, and the Honorable John Buddy is a seasoned legislator, he knows, our standing orders have the boundaries of where the Public Petitions Committee will get to, and where the Public Accounts Committee will pick up from, and where the departmental committees, the matters that the departmental committees can inquire into. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, I really want to beg, even as you consider the issue that has been raised by John Buddy, we be cautious not to be seen to be curtailing the relay and disclosure of critical information to the public, because it is important that Kenyans get to know how their country was looted, so that we stop future regimes from stealing from the people of Kenya. And I said here yesterday, Honorable Speaker, I was contributing on the issue of extrajudicial killings. If we form a habit of burying our heads under the sand and burying our history, that we say, let us now forget what was done yesterday and move on, Honorable Speaker, we get into this cycle of people stealing and impunity being entrenched in our governance structures, Honorable Speaker. Well, and I am sure the Honorable John Buddy doesn't want and doesn't intend us to take that direction. And I have confidence that when the Auditor General finishes his special audit, John Buddy will also table a report here to tell us how that money was looted, and including an audit trail. Because, Honorable Speaker, when I said here that 6.1 billion ended up in people's personal accounts, ended up in accounts in the Cayman Islands, Honorable Speaker, I knew what I was speaking about, and I did assure the House and the country, when the time comes, we shall divulge all this information, and we expect all investigative agencies from EACC to ensure that they get to the rock bottom of this matter and hold people to account. And equally, we expect that none of us as political leaders will now start crying foul that, oh, this and that person is being targeted, oh, we should not be held here, we can only appear at DCI or EACC for 1 hour because we are busy. You cannot be busy now, and you're also busy looting from us only 6 months ago, Honorable Speaker. With that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to submit that we do allow the Public Petitions Committee to carry on with their work in line with our standing orders, allow the Public Accounts Committee, when the time comes to deal with the issues as they should, and the Finance Committee. Should any of these committees before the tragedy that the Honorable John Buddy is saying, all these members of parliament, the 349 of us, Honorable Speaker, are very intelligent people. We shall be able to decipher and be able to know which committee has been diligent, which committee has unraveled the truth, and which one has sought to cover up the truth, if that ever comes to be, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, I would beg that we really allow all these committees to carry on their work in line with our standing orders, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Badi.
Mr. Speaker, let it go on record that I didn't raise this matter to cover up anything, Mr. Speaker.
That's how I understood you.
Yeah, I want to be very clear. I am not in the business of covering up for anyone because I'm not privy to any information. Probably the leader of majority does. I also want to clarify that regarding expenditure under Article 223 of the Constitution, as I promised here, we have already asked the Office of the Auditor General to do a special audit for all those expenditures that have been incurred in the this financial year that is ending. I also know that the Auditor General is overwhelmed, but we have asked her specifically to audit that. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I hope when I sought this clarification, it was understood that I'm just wondering, when it comes to public expenditure, Mr. Speaker, to avoid politicizing it, you need to have independent audit. That is what I thought. That once we have independent audit by the Office of the Auditor General, otherwise we may end up just playing to the gallery, playing politics, having some public officers. By the way, any public officer who appears before Parliament will always try to exonerate himself or herself. To be sure that the officers who are appearing before us are telling us the truth, we need proper audit of these funds. Once you have the audit report, now the officers concerned will now address themselves to the audit report. But at the moment, Mr. Speaker, it is all about rumors, in my view, that may be addressed before committee. That was my concern. That are we dealing with a case where an independent body has audited? If not, is it the right way to proceed? If this House, Mr. Speaker, through you, feels that we can go that way, I have no problem. I will have my time to deal with these accounts at the appropriate time. But I was just worried that we are proceeding in a manner that we are like investigating a public expenditure without involving the Office of the Auditor General, which is mandated through our Constitution to be looking at our expenditure and reporting on them. That is my concern, Mr. Speaker. It has nothing to do with interest. I have absolutely no interest. No account outside Kenya. My accounts are only in the cooperative bank. I have another one in KCB and another one in DDB. You can go and check. There is no money, I have never carried anything with a chopper apart from myself, and maybe the luggage. I've never carried money in a chopper. So, Mr. Speaker, that is my point.
Thank you, Honorable Badi and Majority Leader. I want comments on the petition on Awendo land. Kiarie? The matter between Badi and the Majority Leader is rested there. I'll deal with it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And concerning the matter of the Awendo land, to my mind, the Petitions Committee, as has been formed in this 13th Parliament, is up to task and very current on the matters that are happening in the country, Mr. Speaker. And whatever recommendation that would come out of the Petitions Committee is not bound by whatever other recommendation that would come out of any other office in the land, Mr. Speaker. But for me, the biggest concern, Mr. Speaker, by the submissions that have been made, was the questioning of the mandate of the Committee of CII, Communications, Information and Innovation, on the matter of telecom, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to bring it to the attention of the House that I, as the chairman of the Communications Committee, have written to you, asking officially.
Honorable Kiarie.
Yes.
You are definitely not commenting on the Awendo petition. The matter you are talking to
Yes.
is a matter we prosecuted yesterday or day before. You've written to me, and it's within my competence. I'm working on it.
I'm well guided, sir.
It is not before the House.
I'm well guided, sir.
Thank you.
I would conclude it by saying,
Either
Mr.
you are
Speaker,
supporting the Awendo petitioners or you are not.
Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
the petition found its way and it's rightly before this House, and you committed it to the Committee on Petitions, Mr. Speaker, and it is actually raising an extremely emotive issue, Mr. Speaker. The issue of extrajudicial killings, the issue of forced disappearances. Each and every member in this House can tell you of a case of disappearance, Mr.
Honorable
Speaker.
Carrier,
Yeah.
you are now discussing two petitions that were dealt with yesterday.
Oh, sir. Mr. Speaker, I rest my case. Thank you.
I think you have been too busy of late with your constituents. Ambassador Benjamin Langat Ainamoi, on the Awendo petition.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me this opportunity to comment on this petition on Awendo land. Mr. Speaker, when I listen to the chronology of events, I can see very good Kenyans who have tried their best, Mr. Speaker, to resolve their issue, and all the authorities are failing them, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to write a petitions committee to listen to these Kenyans and actually call the necessary authorities so that this matter is resolved and those Kenyans are settled as per their request. Thank you.
The Honorable James Wandai Ugunja. Did you are on the screen?
Actually, Honorable Speaker, I didn't intend to comment on this.
Then give way to somebody
I
else.
wanted to say something about the matter that was being canvassed by
That
Honorable
one is closed.
John Mbadi,
Yes,
but I am obliged.
thank you.
Thanks.
The Honorable Kuria Kimani Molo.
Not on this one.
Not on this one. Yes. Those who wanted to comment on the petition go to intervention, and I see you on intervention. The Honorable Raso Dido.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I wish to comment on the Awendo land. Land in Kenya is either private, public, or community land. And if a private land or community land need to be excisioned for public use, I think the procedure in law is very clear. I think any attempt by a government body or quasi-government body to acquire private land by fiat without following the due process of the law, I believe is illegal. And this House should rise to protect properties of individuals. Because how else will foreigners invest in Kenya if the rights of them owning properties is not protected? For that reason, I support that petition, and I believe the petition committee should do a good job on it so that individual properties are protected. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Nicole James Seme.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to comment on this petition. Mr. Speaker, we are all terrestrial animals, which means we live on land. And the land is really the single most important property one can have. And if people's land are taken illegally, they proceed to follow the process until the end, and nothing happens. Mr. Speaker, the system has failed them. I therefore support this petition, but Mr. Speaker, it also raises one issue. We are seeing so many petitions. So what we need to ask ourselves, are our institutions as established serving our people, or we have institutions that don't care about the people follow the process, they get to a place where they should be compensated, and they don't get to compensated. will it be possible that all issues of this nature will be brought to Parliament? When people come to Parliament so often, it means they have lost confidence in the other system, particularly the judicial system. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this. But what it means, the loss of confidence and the inability of our institutions to protect our people should be noted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Nikal Elachi Beatrice Dagoretti, North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to support the petition. Mr. Speaker, when you look at the petition, you realize this is a petition that started even before we went into the new constitution. And therefore, you find that the people of Awendo have searched for answers since 1988. You come to 2003, and now that we don't have anything called Awendo Township Council, I think it is time, and that is why, Mr. Speaker, they find themselves believing that this House can give them justice. And I think it is important for the Committee on Petitions to realize that has been a very long time. There is need we just finalize for them this matter. And more importantly, not just this matter, Mr. Speaker, many people who are going through a lot of challenges because of promulgating into the new constitution and finding themselves wondering, how do they deal now with the Ministry of Lands, and how do you deal even with the judiciary? We know that we have arbitration, but more importantly, even the petitions that we have seen in this House, I am hoping the Committee on Petition will be able now to start bringing us reports, because when you look at the 90 days, I think some of them are now lapsing, and it will just be fair if this House can give any recommendation for any of the petitions that we have received. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Innocent Mugabe, are you on this petition? No. Baringo North, Member of Parliament, are you on this petition? Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this particular petition. If you realize many Kenyans are duped through judicial process because of the big boys who are able to satisfy their quotas and make rulings in favor or against the citizens, innocent citizens, who would have otherwise benefited from compensation. Mr. Speaker, the coming of this petition to this House, I agree with Honorable Promseme that this is a vote of no confidence from the public, from the people of Awendo, to the judiciary of this country. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, there is need actually to regularize the number of petitions that comes to this House. If there is a petition in Kisumu County, the County Assembly of Kisumu should be able to deal with that petition at that place rather than bringing everything to the National Assembly, so that if there are land grabbers in Awendo, then sort out your land grabbers at that particular place, because you know best who are those ones who actually were able to exchange you.
Baringo.
So, Speaker, I support that petition.
Order. This is the National Assembly of Kenya. And any Kenyan from any part of Kenya has the right to come to this House to prosecute their interests and the interests of people they live with. You are totally out of order. Stephen Mule, are you queuing for this?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. First and foremost, I want to support this petition. Yes. And I want to ask the committee to move with speed because, Mr. Speaker, since 1988, there are many Kenyans, not only on this petition, but many Kenyans in this country, whereby their land has been acquired illegally, either by former town clerk officers or by the county government. Mr. Speaker, I want to bring to attention of the committee which will handle this, the Committee of Petition, that you can imagine some people who have gone the court process to reclaim back their land. And the court has ruled to make sure that they are compensated or the land is returned to them. And the county governments of the day, they are not able to pay those Kenyans. They are not able to return the land. They are not willing to cooperate. So, Mr. Speaker, the kind of ruling and the kind of expectation we are expecting from this committee should look at all issues regarding land which has been acquired from either the public, a family, individual, illegally, to have justice for their property in this country. I support, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Marakwet, is it West? The last one, huh?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to comment on this very important petition. Mr. Speaker, the issue raised by the petitioner from Awendo is an issue that is cross-cutting in the entire Republic of Kenya. It represents a random sample of what happened. Mr. Speaker, the local authority, as was established then, allocated several parcels of land to people in county councils. Mr. Speaker, when there was change from the county councils or from the local authorities to county government, there was a lot of problem, a lot of challenges that were not fully addressed by the local authorities. Mr. Speaker, where I come from, Elgeyo Marakwet County, there are so many issues to do with transfer of land from the local authorities to the county governments. Mr. Speaker, I prevail upon the committee that is going to look at this to be able to look at the entire country and be able to see whether they can be able to resolve the issues that individuals had. Mr. Speaker, local authorities in this country had the authority to issue allotment letters. But when the county governments came in, they revoked the allotment letters and left the people who acquired parcels of land under local authorities without those parcels. So, Mr. Speaker, I fully support that this committee on petition looks fully at the petition view of recommending compensation to individuals who were given or who were allotted or who received allotment letters during the county councils or during the local authorities and were subsequently evicted, or their land was forcefully taken over by the county governments as currently constituted. So, Mr. Speaker, I pray that this committee looks at this issue at breadth and length to be able to look at that issue. Mr. Speaker, this committee also on petition should be able to reopen what the transition authority did on matters to do with land by the county councils. Mr. Speaker, so that they can be able to get at the in-depth issues that our people faced. I pray that this committee opens the report of the transition authority with a view of looking at the atrocities faced by the people, especially in losing their land. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Timothy. That brings to an end that petition. Honorable members, I wish to acknowledge the following. In the Speaker's Gallery, Kikuyu Boys High School, Kikuyu, Kiambu. In the Public Gallery, Star Sheikh Academy, Mavoko, Machakos. ACK Kamutu, Mbere North, Embu. Maryland Community Center, Embakasi East, Nairobi. Bungoma County Assembly Staff, Bungoma. On your behalf and on my behalf, I wish to welcome all the visitors in the House of Parliament. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Majority. Owen.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, March 8th, 2023, in the afternoon sitting. 1. Reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2021 and the certificates therein. Cooperative University of Kenya, Kenya Railways Corporation, and Dr. Daniel Wako Marende Technical and Vocational College. 2. Reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following constituencies for the year ended 30th June 2021 and the certificates therein. 1. Sotik, Kandoi, Kisumu West, Rarieda, Emuhaya, Kinango, Garsen, Luanda, Bureti, Aina Moi, Belgut, Gem, Sabatia, Vihiga, Nyando, Kisumu Central, Lamu East, and Galole. 3. Reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2022 and the certificates therein. New Partnerships for African Development, Africa Peer Review Mechanism, NEPAD APRM, Kenya Secretariat, Anti-Counterfeit Authority, Local Authorities Provident Fund, Kenya Industrial Properties Institute, Railways Development Levy Fund Holding Account, State Department of Transport, Technical Assistance to Enhance the Capacity of the President's Delivery Unit, ADB Grant number 550015501290 project, State Department for Interior and Citizen Services, National Police Service Commission Staff Car Loan and Mortgage Scheme Fund, and finally, Kenya Youth Empowerment and Opportunities Project, credit number IDA 5812-KE, Micro and Small Enterprises Authority. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Owen. Vice Chair, Procedure and House Rules Committee. Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, 8th March 2023, the 6th report of the Procedure and House Rules Committee on amendments to the standing orders. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give a notice of motion that this House adopts the 6th report of the Procedure and House Rules Committee on amendments to the standing orders, laid on the table of this House on Wednesday, 8th March 2023, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 124 and of the Constitution and Standing Order 265. 1. Approves the proposed amendments to the standing orders as contained in Annex 3 of the report. 2. Resolves that the amendments agreed to in the Committee of the Whole House and approved by the House shall take effect on Thursday, 23rd March 2023. And 3. Further resolves that questions pending reply before the committees as at the commencement date shall be disposed of by the respective committees. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Honorable members, I'll start with a statement by the Honorable Member for Embakasi Central, Benjamin Gadiru. Where's the Honorable Member? Member for Embakasi Central. Statement on unfair trading practices by foreign investors in Kenya. Is he? Can you give the member the microphone? There you are, Mheshimiwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to request for a statement regarding unfair trading practices by the foreign investors in Kenya. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provision of Standing Order number 44-2C, I wish to request for a statement from Chairperson of Departmental Committee on Trade, industry, and cooperative regarding the unfair trading practice by foreign investors in the country. Honorable Speaker, the country has been experiencing an influx of foreign investors in various sectors, including manufacturing, agriculture, among other sectors. While this investment can bring much needed capital and expertise, there have been a concern that such investments, particularly in trade, are also occasioning unfair competition from local business to local businesses, especially micro, small, and medium enterprise (MSMEs) in Nairobi City and surrounding counties. Of note, foreign traders, like the case of China Square, that recently aroused a hue and cry among the local traders, take advantage of economic scale and advantage access to goods manufactured in their home country, which they retail and even hawk locally at prices that are far lower than what local traders can manage due to high costs resulting from import duties and supply chain costs. Honorable Speaker, the impact of the unfair competition and trading practice is significant, and if not checked, local traders stand the risk of operating at a loss or being forced either to exit the market, which will result to loss of jobs, decline in national revenue, and general reversal of the significant gains that we have so far been made growing the economy from the base. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I seek a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Trade, Industry, and Cooperative on the following. 1. Could the chairperson outline the policies and regulatory mechanisms that guide licensing of foreign investors to operate retail business in the country, and the circumstances under which China Square was cleared to undertake such business in the country? Number 2, what measures have been put in place to ensure local traders are cushioned from unfair trading practices and competition from foreign investors, particularly in retail trade, including measures for protection and promotion of local investments and enterprises with a view to ensuring long-term growth and development in the Kenya economy? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Committee on Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, is the chair here? Any member convey to your chair that we need a response in 2 weeks? Let's go to the questions now. The first question, 026, Honorable Rindikiri Mwiridhania.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to the provisions of the Standing Order 42A5, I wish to ask the following question. Question number 026/2023. Could the Cabinet Secretary explain the criteria used by the Ministry to categorize some regions in the country as arid and semi-arid land ourselves? Could the government consider reviewing the criteria used and categorize Boro constituency as arid and semi-arid region, considering that the aridity index is high in the most part of the constituency? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Departmental Committee on Regional Development, is the chair here? Expect the answer in response in 2 weeks. Next, the Honorable Aduma Owor MP, question 027. Member for Nyakach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the one and the only member for Nyakach. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is also pursuant to Standing Order 42A 5. Chair, my question is to the Cabinet Secretary for Tourism and Wildlife and Heritage. And my question is, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the circumstances that led to the fatal injury of Meshach Otieno Law of ID number 146056662 on 12th February 2023, and the death of Sylvan Solwoch Otieno, a minor, on the 19th February 2023 following an attack by the stray hippopotamus in the area. Mr. Speaker, I would want the Cabinet Secretary to state why no actions have been taken to address the above listed cases which were reported to Sondu Muriu Police Station and also to the Kenya Wildlife Region Office in Kisumu. I would want the Cabinet Secretary also to state any compensation plans that the ministry had put in place for farmers whose crops were destroyed by the said hippopotamuses and the families who lost their loved ones through the attack by the wild animals. I want the Cabinet Secretary further to outline the immediate measures that the ministry has put in place to curb the incidences of attacks and the destruction of crops by the straying hippopotamuses in the various wards in North Nyakach, in Central Nyakach, and in West Nyakach. Mr. Speaker, it's worth noting that the kid who we lost his life was a standard 8 and a candidate pupil, and these hippopotamuses were straying into the homes. So I would want to know what has done, the compensation measures which are being put in place to compensate our farmers in Gemrai wetland, Wasare wetlands, and in West Nyakach, where this menace has been
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Thank you.
Committee on Tourism and Wildlife, is the chair here? Member, any member, inform your chair. We need an answer in 2 weeks. Member for Matungulu, Stephen Mule, question 028.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to provision of Standing Order number 42S, sub 5, I want to ask the following question to the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning. Could the Cabinet Secretary, one, explain the circumstances that have led to the payouts of over $2.8 million in legal fee between the year 2014 and 2020 by the East African Development Bank, of which the Republic of Kenya is a shareholder under the East African Treaty. 2, clarify the term of the tenure of the Office of the Director General of the said bank and confirm if the current holder is lawful in office. 3, the state the reasons why the shareholders in the said bank, particularly Kenya, who is one of the main shareholders, which with the largest shares holding within the bank, have not been paid any dividend during the tenure I've stated above from 2014 to 2022 under the tenure of the Director General. 4, the Cabinet Secretary states the measures being taken by the Ministry of National Treasury and Economic Planning to safeguard Kenyan taxpayers' money held at the bank at the headquarters in Uganda. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Mule. Chair, Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning. Is that the MP for Molo? When can you bring the response?
2 weeks, Mr. Speaker.
2 weeks, so be it. Question 029, Member for Madare, Honorable Anthony Olwoch.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question number 029 of 2023, the Cabinet Secretary for Health. I would like the Cabinet Secretary to outline what steps the ministry is taking to expedite the posting of medical interns who graduated in 2022 but who are yet to receive their posting letters, which they ought to have in order to commence their internship. I would also like the Cabinet Secretary to explain what measures the ministry is taking to fast-track internship for affected students, noted that they cannot practice anywhere in the country until they obtain medical licenses, which are a prerequisite upon completion of internship. Lastly, I would like the Cabinet Secretary to bring this House up to speed on what steps the ministry is taking to address the general shortage of doctors in the country. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Lodge. Chair, Departmental Committee on Health, Dr. Bokose. When can you bring the response?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank Honorable Lodge for that question. I'll be able to bring the question to the House in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you. The next question, 030, the Honorable Jared Okello, member for Nyando.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker, and permit me firstly to congratulate you, Bwana Speaker. You have added an additional feather in your hat. And now you are right, Honorable Moses Masika Wetangula Udhiambo, Doctor. Congratulations.
Where does Odhiambo come from? To have a doctor, you have to be an Odhiambo.
It goes without saying, Honorable Speaker, that we have told people not to throw stones aimlessly, past Kericho all the way to Bosia Board.
Yes.
Otherwise, you can hit a professor or a doctor. And going forward, we shall be very careful protecting you within the compound, Honorable Speaker. No stones shall be thrown where you are.
Go ahead.
Honorable Speaker, my question goes to the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture and Agriculture and Livestock. Could the Cabinet Secretary explain the interventions that the ministry has instituted to mitigate and end the huge losses suffered by rice farmers in West Kano and Ahero irrigation schemes due to long period of drought and invasion by Quilea birds that consume approximately 20,000 tons of rice in every harvest? And number two, and finally, would the ministry state steps it will be taking to compensate farmers who have experienced major losses through the aforementioned occurrences? And I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Jared. Chair, Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock. Mutunga, is he here? Members of the committee inform the chair to bring the answer in 2 weeks. Next order, that's the end of question time and statements.
Order number 8, procedural motion, extension or period for consideration of certain public petitions.
Chairperson, public petitions. Yes, member for Turbo, proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Motion for procedural motion, extension of period for consideration of certain public petitions. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the following motion, that notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 2272, Committal of Petitions, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the public petitions specified hereunder by the Public Petitions Committee by a further period of 45 days with effect from 8 March 2023. One of the petitions is completion of house units of Kibera residents funded by the World Bank. 2, the gazettement of whole irrigation scheme, land presented by Honorable Said Hiribae, MP. And 3, funds spent by national government contrary to provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution. Honorable Speaker, the petitions were committed to the Public Petitions Committee on 10th and 15th November 2022, pursuant to Standing Order 2272, and the petitions are due for today, 8th March 2023. After taking into consideration the suspension of committee sittings during the long recess by the Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the committee has since made vital steps in the consideration of the petitions by the petitioners and various stakeholders. However, there are still stakeholders who are yet to present to the committee. However, there are stakeholders who are yet to appear before the committee to respond to petitions as well as to make site visits that were planned. Honorable Speaker, the committee is dedicated and keen on pursuing the matters referred to the committee to finality and to provide relevant responses to the petitioners. Honorable Speaker, it is on this backdrop that the committee is requesting the House to grant more time to enable it to finalize and present comprehensive reports on the petitions. Honorable Speaker, I request Honorable Susan Kiamba to second this motion. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. Seconder.
Honorable Susan Kiamba to second.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm a member of this committee, and I must say, in dealing with each of these petitions, we realized that to understand each petition, we needed to understand the complex realities surrounding each petition. And this required an engagement with a wide range of stakeholders that, of course, required more time, and that actually made it quite challenging for us to really complete the assignment as had already been planned. Secondly, in dealing with petitions, we realized that it's not an issue of linear progression. It's a back and forth exercise that actually saw us sometimes have to go back and meet several stakeholders several times, not mentioning the fact that there are those stakeholders who would not be available at the time we would actually require them. And based on all these realities, Honorable Speaker, I beg to second. Thank you.
Very well. Honorable members, I now propose the question that notwithstanding, very well, that notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 2272, Committal of Petitions, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the public petitions specified here under by the Public Petitions Committee by a further period of 45 days with effect from 8th March 2023. 1, completion of house units for Kibera residents funded by the World Bank. 2, the gazettement of whole irrigation scheme land presented by the Horn Side Hirimbai MP. And 3, funds spent by the national government contrary to provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution. Is it the mood that I put the question? Yes. Honorable members, I now put the question that
notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 227 Committal of Petitions, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the public petition specified hereunder by the Public Petitions Committee by a further period of 45 days with effect from 8th March 2023. 1. Completion of house units for Kibera residents funded by the World Bank. 2. The gazettement of the whole irrigation scheme land presented by the Horn Side, Kirimbai MP. And thirdly, funds spent by the national government contrary to provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Order number 9, the National Rating Bill, National Assembly Bill number 55 of 2022, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to provide a comprehensive framework for imposition of rates on land and buildings by county governments, to provide for then valuation of rateable property, to provide for the appointment and powers of valuers, to provide for the establishment powers and functions of the National Rating Tribunal, and for connected purposes. Order number 10, special motion. Consideration of a nominee for appointment as the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya.
Mover.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the Joint Committee on National Assembly and Senate and approves the nomination of Dr. Susan Jemtai Koech as a Deputy Governor, Central Bank. Honorable Speaker, the motion.
Please read the motion as it is in the order paper. Give him the order paper.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, as unguided. I beg to move that, taking into consideration the findings of the Joint Committee of the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning and the Senate Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on its report on the vetting of Dr. Susan Jemtai Koech for the approval as Deputy Governor of Central Bank, laid on the table of this House yesterday, Tuesday, 7th March 2023, and pursuant to Section 13B1 and 13C1 of the Central Bank of Kenya Act, Section 82 of the Public Appointments Parliament Approval Act of 2011, and Standing Order 216.5F of the National Assembly Standing Orders, that this House, Honorable Speaker, approves the appointment of one Dr. Susan Jemtai Koech as a Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya.
Proceed to move.
Honorable Speaker, I beg that this House adopts the report of the Joint Committee of Finance and National Planning and the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget of the Senate, that we approve Dr. Susan Jemtai Koech. Honorable Speaker, during this day, great day that we celebrate International Women's Day, when I imagine, Mr. Speaker, a gender equal world, when I imagine a world free of bias, stereotypes, and discrimination, when I imagine a world that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive, when I imagine a world where difference is valued and celebrated, then this House today will go in the books of history as having contributed to putting women in leadership and putting influential, qualified, competent women at where it matters, the decision-making table, Mr. Speaker. And I would like to congratulate all the leaders in this House. And I know most of our women leaders are in New York, but the ones that are here led by our Deputy Speaker, Madam Boss, and all the women of this House, we celebrate you today. All the women of this country that are captains in their respective fields, whether it is banking, whether it is finance, whether it is construction, whether it is political leadership, whether it's in academia, we celebrate you today. We celebrate all our women that are hardly celebrated at home, who make sure that our meals are cooked, our clothes are pressed, our diaries are diarized, our beds are made, our places are clean. We celebrate you today, our great women of this country. Honorable Speaker, Article 231(1) of the Constitution establishes the Central Bank of Kenya, whose mandate is as follows: to formulate monetary policy, to promote price stability, to issue currency, and to oversight financial sector, and perform other functions as may be conferred by an act of parliament. Section 13(b)(1) of the Central Bank Act, Cap 491, Honorable Speaker, establishes the office of the Deputy Governor, who shall be appointed by the President through a transparent, competent process and with the approval of Parliament. The Deputy Governors, Mr. Speaker, shall perform such functions as a governor may assign them. Honorable Speaker, having received a message from His Excellency the President on the nomination of Dr. Susan Jemtai Koech for the position of Deputy Governor of Central Bank, the Speaker of the Senate and the Speaker of the National Assembly on Tuesday, 14th of February 2023, and on Wednesday, 15th of February 2023, respectively, issued a communication and directed that the approval hearing for the nominee for appointment to the position of Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya be conducted jointly by the relevant committees of the House of Parliament as required by the Central Bank Act, Cap 491 of the laws of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, the name of the nominee and her curriculum vitae was referred to the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning. The committee held preliminary joint sittings on Tuesday, 28th of February 2023, to prepare for the approval hearing and consider the memoranda received by the public. Honorable Speaker, the vetting of the nominee of the joint committee complied with the constitutional and legal requirements and established procedures for the hearing. The committees adhere to the provisions 118 of the Constitution on public participation and openness in carrying out the approval process. Notification inviting the public was submitted that were placed on mainstream media on Saturday, 18th of February, as required by Section 6(4) of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act of 2011. Honorable Speaker, we did our joint hearing on Tuesday, the 20th of February. The hearings, in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the hearing was guided by the provision of the Constitution of the Central Bank of Kenya, the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act of 2011, and the standing orders of the respective houses. Honorable Speaker, the committees made observations based on the constitutional legal requirements, as well as submissions of the nominee during the approval hearing. Further, Mr. Speaker, the committees were seized of the provisions of Article 231 of the Constitution, and together with Section 13(b) and 13(c) of the Central Bank of Kenya, Cap 491. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Section 13(b) of the Central Bank Act, the Public Service Commission invited applications from suitably qualified persons for the position of the Deputy Governor Central Bank. The advertisement was published in the print media and the Commission's website on the 1st of November 2022, 9th November 2022. The application period closed on the 21st of November 2022 with a total of 79 persons submitting their applications desirous to become the next Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya. And Mr. Speaker, I've annexed that report and can be accessed by honorable members. Honorable Speaker, the committee considered the nominees' academic qualifications, employment record, and work experience, membership to relevant professional associations, public service, political activities and affiliations, potential conflict of interest, suitability for the position, tax compliance, integrity, and other thematic areas as relevant to that are required for one to be Deputy Governor of Central Bank. The nominee, Honorable Speaker, is a Kenyan citizen, does not hold dual citizenship. She was born on the 22nd of March 1993 in Marakwet West constituency in Elgeyo Marakwet County. The nominee, Honorable Speaker, holds a doctorate in business management from Moi University, having graduated in 2015. She is also a holder of a master's degree of Masters of Business Administration in Strategic Management and a Bachelor of Business Management, Human Resource Management from Moi University. Dr. Susan, Honorable Speaker, also holds a diploma in banking. The nominee, Honorable Speaker, has worked as a principal secretary to the State Department of Wildlife between 2018 and 2019. She was also the Principal Secretary for the State Department of East African Community and also acted as a Principal Secretary for the State Department for Regional Development. Prior to joining public service, Dr. Susan served in the banking sector, rising from the level of just an entry point level at Kenya Commercial Bank, all the way to becoming the regional manager for Kenya Commercial Bank, Mr. Speaker. The nominee informed the committee that she has held other leadership positions, including being the vice chairperson of Kenya Institute of Bankers, being the vice chair of Elgeyo Marakwet County Service Board, being involved in training and development committee of Kenya Commercial Bank. He's a member of Kenya Institute of Bankers. He's a member of Kenya Institute of Management. She's also a part-time lecturer at Mount Kenya University, BAM chairperson. She has served as a BM chairperson at St. Peter's Kapkata Secondary School, as a patron of Suruet Cooperative Society, and as a BOM chair of St. Francis Girls School, Suwero. Honorable Speaker, the nominee has extensive experience in banking. And Honorable Speaker, I'm very happy that the nominee we have here brings rich experience, having been a banker herself. That before joining government, she served in banking sector, and therefore, serving now as a deputy governor, if this House approves her, will give her a unique skill set, having actually worked in the banking sector before. In fact, when you're doing the interview, you're telling her perhaps she was even doing the wrong job, being the PS for wildlife and everything else. This is where she really belongs, because it matches her academic qualifications, it matches her long experience as a banker with Kenya Commercial Bank, and has also demonstrated a lot of interest, including even continued membership in this in Kenya Bankers Association. The nominee, Mr. Speaker, it was a considered opinion that meets Chapter 6 of the Constitution on Leadership and Integrity, having been issued with clearance certificate from the relevant agencies, and that is EACC, KRA, DCI, Office, ORPP, and Higher Education Transport. Honorable Speaker, we did not receive any memoranda that opposed her nomination to the position. The nominee, Mr. Speaker, as I said, holds in-depth knowledge of the state of the financial development in Kenya and linkages to economic sectors across the region. Honorable Speaker, we put this nominee to task on the current move from the banking sector to fintech. Because, Honorable Speaker, if you realize banking in the 90s, the revolution was in the banks in early millennium, 2001, 2002. And that's when we found the mushrooming of banks, that Equity Bank that really progressed. Over the years, we went to mobile money, and that could explain the success of institutions like M-Pesa and Airtel Money and all these other mobile money transfer services. But, Honorable Speaker, there is an interesting trend that's coming up with digital lenders, coming up of digital savers, where most of our young people do not even hold a bank account. They operate from their mobile phones, and when they need to even access loans, they go to this digital service. And we asked whether she's versed with that, and whether she's versed that there's not even proper legislation to regulate all this. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, you might have realized a lot of harassment by these apps to our customers, because there is no clear legislation and policy framework around it. But this Honorable Speaker demonstrated that she understands the field, and when she comes in, she's going to hit the road running to make sure that these fintech companies that are offering these important financial services on digital platforms are regulated, Mr. Speaker. We talked even about the international stuff like cryptocurrencies and the bitcoins, Mr. Speaker. And that is where the country is. We are talking about people that lost billions, trillions of shillings in bitcoins. And nowadays, even a new trend of forex trading, where we have many people who are doing some legitimate business, others illegitimate business on forex. And someone will tell you, I am able to multiply your money and make so much money by just on forex trading. And if we do not move with time, then these things are going to catch up with us. And we're going to find ourselves in a situation where money has been lost, Kenyans are losing their money, and there is nothing, even any law, that we can tie those two. And we put this lady, Dr. Susan, to task, and I'm sure that if this House finds in its kind consideration to approve, and I beseech this House to approve this, and especially during at a time when when you're celebrating International Women's Day, this great, competent, qualified, experienced, ready to serve as a Deputy Governor of Central Bank. With that, I move, Honorable Speaker, I beg, and with that, Honorable Speaker, I beg to move and I'll ask the Honorable Vice Chair, the Ambassador Benjamin Lagat, MP Ainamoy, to second.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to second this motion. Mr. Speaker, I think the chair has done a good job. He has raised all the points that we had as a committee. Mr. Speaker, the approval at the committee level was unanimous, Mr. Speaker, both at the Senate and at the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker. And so, simply when we look at the CV of Dr. Susan, I think it is clear that she's the most qualified lady to hold that position of the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank. As the chair said, she holds a PhD in Business Administration, a bachelor's degree, Mr. Speaker, and a diploma in banking, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in terms of experience, she has held leadership positions in this country as a principal secretary for East Africa Community from 2018 to 2019, and also principal secretary for the State Department of Wildlife from 2019 to 2022. Mr. Speaker, the committee is expected to check the suitability of the nominee, Mr. Speaker. And the suitability is checked, Mr. Speaker, through, we check it through academic qualifications, the experience of the person, and the integrity of that person, Mr. Speaker. And as I said, she qualified in terms of experience, she qualifies in terms of the academic qualification, Mr. Speaker, and she has no integrity issues. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the House to approve the nominee and we release her to go and start the job, Mr. Speaker. As we speak today, we have several challenges in terms of our economy, Mr. Speaker. Our Kenya shilling is depreciating, Mr. Speaker. I think in the last 1 year, we have seen the Kenya shilling depreciating by over 30%, Mr. Speaker, from 100 shillings to $1 to 135, Mr. Speaker. The cost of living, Mr. Speaker, is still an issue. So I think I want to ask the House to approve the nominee so that she can help to, in terms of resolving all those issues, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to request the House to support, and I second, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, I now propose the question that, taking into consideration the findings of the Joint Committee of the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning and Senate Standing Committee on Finance and Budget in its report on vetting of Dr. Susan Jemtai Koech for approval as Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 7 March 2023, and pursuant to Section 13B1 and 13C1 of the Central Bank of Kenya Act, Section 8.2 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011 and Standing Order 216.5F of the National Assembly, Standing Orders, this House approves the appointment of Dr. Susan Jemtai Koech as Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya. Very well. Is it the mood in the House that I put the question? Yes. Honorable members, I now put the question that, taking into consideration the findings of the Joint Committee of the National Assembly Departmental Committee of Finance and National Planning and Senate Standing Committee of Finance and Budget in its report on vetting of Dr. Susan Jemtai Koech for approval as Deputy Governor of Central Bank of Kenya, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, 7 March 2023, and pursuant to Section 13B1 and 13C1 of the Central Bank of Kenya Act, Section 8(2) of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011 and Standing Orders 216(5)F of the National Assembly Standing Orders, this House approves the appointment of Dr. Susan Jemtai Koech as Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as are of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 11, motion, general debate on the proposal to Parliament to consider amending the Constitution and the standing orders. Resumption of debate.
Yes. Very well. On this motion, we had Honorable Jessica Mbalu, who was in the floor, and she had a balance of 6 minutes. What is out of order?
Mr. Speaker,
yes.
I raised the issue that we probably don't have a quorum in this House.
True.
Yes.
It is true. For purposes that it is true.
Very well. Sergeant at Arms, ring the bell. Sergeant at Arms to ring the bell for 10 minutes. And meanwhile, no member should leave the House.
Inaandika kiti but naonyesha hapa purple. Wanajua ikikuja intervention is a point of order. Wanaiona speaker kuna kama hivi. Yake hata ni kubwa kidogo. Wanaona pale ndani. Wanaona wakiona hapa na moja security. Tunataka kufanya. You are in the queue. Yes. There are 17 requests, so you are number 17. Ukiondoa kadi alafu nirudishe tena napotea. Utarudi mwisho. Sasa in case utarudi tu mwisho. In case ingekuwa save ingekuwa hapa nyuma. Huyu akitoa arudishe.
Very well, honorable members, we may proceed. We have quorum.
Deputy Governor of Central Bank, not even a word. This is history. History has been made.
Honorable members, order. We are on order number 11. A general debate on the proposal to Parliament to consider amending the Constitution and the standing orders. Order members, on next to contribute on this is Honorable Joseph Emathe of Turkana Central. Is she in the house? In her absence, could we have, is she there? Joseph, is he there? Proceed, Joseph, give him the microphone. Honorable Joseph, you may proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. From the onset, I support the motion on amending the Constitution. And it is critical that we consider the three issues as raised and ensure that the Constitution actually speaks in respect to these emerging issues as communicated. And Honorable Speaker, it is important to consider that the President is giving us a good foundation to ensure that issues of checking government and ensuring that duties are segregated and that we have ministers come into this house is a very important and pertinent issue. I sit in the Committee on Procedures and House Rules, and I want to thank that committee because soon we'll be having ministers joining us during the question time. Number two, the gender issue needs to be considered as provisioned, and I am one of the persons that is in support, and considering that today is the World International Women's Day, I want to support that consideration, knowing that, Honorable Speaker, it is important to practice it even as we celebrate the Women's Day, the Women's International Day today. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. That's what I wanted to mention.
Honorable Millie, on a point of order.
The House. Mr. Speaker, we have been discussing this issue that is ongoing on the floor for a long, long time. And we all know that it is headed nowhere. We are actually like conversing. And Parliament is a very serious house where we are not supposed to converse. You either have a bill or you have a motion that is passed that has an end. This has no end game. We are like women conversing in a market. So when are we having serious house business? We want bills that Kenyans, instead of amorphous issues, which are not motions, they are not bills, they are, I don't know what they are. It's like jelly. Neither here nor there, Mr. Speaker. So can the House leadership, I know Ichungwa was a very effective chairman of budget. I don't know if he was given the wrong docket, because since he became a majority leader, he's just bringing us amorphous things. I even have a bill which you can bring here, family reproductive health care bill, which is already matured. You can bring it and we discuss serious issues affecting reproductive issues so that we don't have a senator going to the other house with stained panties. Let us discuss issues that we can move forward. Some of us are very serious and want to move forward. We don't want to just come here and converse. Oh, there should be what? There should be cabinet secretaries. There should be women representation. Without a bill, we are just conversing. We either have a bill or a motion. So, otherwise, we are not spending our time usefully.
So what's your point of order?
My point of order is that the House leadership needs to bring a substantive issue on the House so that we use our time meaningfully. Because we actually have so many multiple roles. I've just run from a budget committee where we are dealing with budget policy statements. So come and discuss the House. Then I'm coming to the marketplace
very
again.
Well, very
honestly.
Well. You've been heard now. Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I hear what the Honorable Millie is saying, and she has every justification to say whatever she is saying, and her views are well noted, more so by the House Business Committee. But Millie is not a first-time member of Parliament. If anything, now she qualifies to be the grandmother of this House. And she's actually our grandmother in the House. And she knows it is a House Business Committee that schedules business to be transacted in the House, not the leader of majority. I'm sure she knows that. But I know since she just wanted my attention, I've given her that attention. And she also knows the important business she's doing in the Budget and Appropriations Committee is the next very important business that will be on the floor of this House. She knows we processed the appropriations bill last week, and she was not there, and she's a member of the House, of the Budget and Appropriations Committee. She has just walked in, as usual. She walks in at around 4:30 or 5. Maybe the first thing Honorable Millie should know is that the House rises or sits from 2:30 p.m. and there has been a lot of good business. And I want to assure you, Honorable Millie, the ratings bill, which was here for the first reading, you can start acquainting yourself with the ratings bill. Is already before the House. The other private members' bills, I would encourage you to purport, because I have not seen anything of the nature of the bill you purport to be before the House Business Committee. Maybe you can follow up with the bill track and get to know where your bill is. But also encourage members, like Honorable Millie, to follow up on their bills, individual members' bills. But in terms of government bills, they are well in line. Those that have been passed by Cabinet will be lined before the House Business Committee for consideration. and scheduling for business. And of course, as usual, tomorrow, Thursday, at 2:48 p.m., Honorable Millie, please note the time, 2:48 p.m., when the House rises at 2:30, I will be giving the business that is listed for the next week. But you should also not belittle the work that is before the House now in terms of the motion on general debate on constitutional amendments. Part of what the Deputy Speaker tabled this afternoon while you are away, and I know your ultimatum with your party leader was ending today, probably that is what you are working on. But while you are away, the standing orders report by the House Procedures Committee was tabled and is scheduled hopefully for debate tomorrow afternoon. It is good that you be there because I'm sure at one point you have worked in the House Procedures Committee, and it will be good to hear your contribution to that. Otherwise, there is a lot of business lined up, and just to encourage you to be appearing in the House in good time, not at 5 p.m. when everybody is about to leave. But I was saying, Honorable Millie, is don't belittle the contributions. I know there are about 100 members plus, Mr. Speaker, who have contributed to this general debate on constitutional amendments. And this debate is not for nothing. It will inform what will come eventually into the constitutional amendment bills on the 2/3 gender rule that I know is very dear to the Honorable Millie Odhiambo, on the creation of the office of an official leader of opposition, and on the creation, anchoring our NGCDF, Senators Oversight Fund, and GAF in our constitution. Therefore, it's only fair that you allow those, and I know you may or you may not have contributed, allow the members who are here who may not have contributed to that general debate to contribute so that they enrich what will eventually get into the bill. Therefore, it should not be seen like that bill, that particular motion is superfluous or wasting the House's time. It forms part of what will inform what eventually gets into the bill. Thank you.
Very well. I think that matter is settled, and there are members who want to speak on this particular motion. Next, we shall have the member for Butula, Joseph Oyula. I know there are many members who have not spoken on this, and they want a chance to speak on it. So let's allow them to also speak on this matter, even if you have spoken on it. Honorable Oyula, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, may I take this opportunity to congratulate our women in Kenya for this International Women's Day, and particularly the women of Butula, who supported me to be here. Mr. Speaker, my contribution to the current motion, I support it as far as it does not touch on I support it as far as it touches on the amendment that affects NGDCF and the Women Fund and the other fund for the Senate. But the other areas, Mr. Speaker, I would not support at the moment. I only support that areas that touch on CDF. Mr. Speaker, as you know, CDF is one of the funds that has developed this country, and therefore it is important that it is put in a way that there will be no more threats of coming from anywhere about the removal of CDF or disbanding CDF. Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't have much to say because I had already talked about it earlier, and I think I only support those areas of CDF, Women Fund, and Senate Fund. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. If you had spoken on this particular motion, you may declare early enough so that you don't speak on it twice. Let's have Honorable Paul Biego. Diego, I'm told, had already spoken on this. What about John Angeno? Is not in the house. Oh, yes. Can I see the Honorable for Kibera? Honorable Borrero?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak on this motion, and before I do so, just as my colleagues have said, today is the World Women's Day. I really want to wish all the women good luck on this day. Now, this motion touches on various aspects of constitutional change. You realize that it is going to be a piecemeal change on the Constitution. Now, some of the areas that will require change might need us to take this to a referendum. And it must be consistent to the requirement of our laws. Now, we have the NGCDF in this motion. Now, when we look at when we started this on NGCDF, we have had court cases saying that it is not legally constituted. And therefore, it gives us time to look at it again and ensure as parliamentarians that we put this in our constitution so that in the future, this is one of the funds that has helped the Kenyan people all over the country. When you go to our constituencies, you realize that NGCDF has done a lot more than any other fund that has been allocated. And therefore, it will be good for us as members of this House to ensure that we anchor this in our constitution, that our future generation will enjoy the efforts that we put. Now, this will also go to the oversight money that is. However, you will realize that it has been lumped on the constitutional change of the office of the opposition. Our country at the moment, we have a system that is not parliamentarian. So we are going to mix our system when we say that we want cabinet ministers to come and answer questions within parliament. Is it a parliamentary system or is it a presidential system? In a presidential system, we have the leader of majority and we have the leader of minority. We have to relook at it and see whether we are still going to maintain our presidential system or we are going to have a hybrid of presidential and parliamentary system. So before we pass this motion, we must be very, very sure where our country is going. Are we going to have a hybrid system? Or are we really not going to have a presidential system, which is in our constitution of 2010? When we are creating the position, the room for leader of opposition, it must be very, very definite, because in the 2010 constitution, there is a requirement that this will have to go for a referendum. However, I take this chance to support that the NGCDF should be anchored within our constitution, the NGAV, and also the oversight money for the Senate should also be anchored within our constitution. Otherwise, I support those areas. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable William Kamket.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to support this motion. And Mr. Speaker, the Kenya Constitution 2010 is a supreme law. But it's a piece of supreme law that, Mr. Speaker, we gave it to ourselves, albeit under very difficult circumstances, because, Mr. Speaker, it was the late Honorable Michuki who made the famous confession that they had clamored for a change of the Constitution without knowing that that moment would arrive. And when that moment arrived, Mr. Speaker, they did not know what to do. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, the late Michuki went ahead and confessed that all they were after was the removal of the former President Moi from power. And they disguised their intentions in constitutional amendment proposals. Mr. Speaker, now we find ourselves in a situation where we have a mongrel of a constitution. We have to be very careful as leadership when we talk about the constitution. There is a saying, Mr. Speaker, that you do not have to fix it if it is working. The constitution that we inherited, Mr. Speaker, at independence was working very well. The hybrid system that had served the country for so long had served this country so well. I have the experience, Mr. Speaker, of having been a member of staff of this National Assembly. I have observed from that Hansard box there, up there, Mr. Speaker, I have observed this parliament, members of the executive, ministers coming to answer questions on the floor of this parliament, responding to parliamentary questions from members of parliament, and ministers themselves being members of parliament. There was no better system of government, and there was no more accountable system of government. What did we do? We went ahead, Mr. Speaker, and borrowed some system from, I don't know, from America or where, to create a parliament that is essentially speaking to itself. What do we do in this parliament, Mr. Speaker? We speak to ourselves. Nobody is listening to us. Ministers are busy with their meetings. And, Mr. Speaker, there is no better authority, Mr. Speaker, than the authority of the Speaker making orders to a cabinet minister, Mr. Speaker, when the minister is here, seated with us, and listening to those orders. When chairpersons of committees, Mr. Speaker, come to answer questions in this parliament, what are we doing? We are speaking to ourselves. We are making a mockery of representation. How can I, for instance, Mr. Speaker, ask, if, for instance, the Honorable Chirorot here, member for Kipkelion West, East, how can I be asking a member for Kipkelion East a parliamentary question that is that's because he's a chairman of a particular committee, and when I follow up with him on a supplementary question, he has no answer at all. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it is time, Mr. Speaker, that we bring cabinet ministers or cabinet secretaries to Parliament so that we are able to hold them to account, Mr. Speaker. So that we, as the elected representatives of the people, are able to hold them to account, and the Speaker, sitting on your chair, Mr. Speaker, is able to make orders to that cabinet minister, and that matter resolved, whichever matter the member is raising. Mr. Speaker, on the matter of NGCDF, Mr. Speaker, my heart paid. The amount of work I have done as member of Parliament is I mean, giving credit to myself, Mr. Speaker, I feel proud that I have done a good job for my people. So, Mr. Speaker, in order to safeguard NGCDF from all the busybodies that have been litigating around, it is our job as members of Parliament to entrench that piece of legislation in the Constitution and make it unreachable to all those litigants. Same applies, Mr. Speaker, to the NGAF, National Government Affirmative Action Fund, as well as, Mr. Speaker, the new fund that we are proposing, the Senate Oversight Fund. Mr. Speaker, if we do not do this as a House, we will be exposing ourselves to the shenanigans in the streets that are hell-bent. And Mr. Speaker, in this country, there is a lot of jealousy, especially those whom we defeated in the elections. Their job is just to hire some funny lawyers on the streets there to try and kill the dreams of Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, we have a choice as members of Parliament. As has been said by the Speaker ahead of me, we have a choice as leadership. What kind of democracy are we going to practice? Are we going to practice parliamentary democracy? Are we going to practice, Mr. Speaker, presidential democracy, or a hybrid? Mr. Speaker, in the last term, I came up with what I thought was a very good piece of legislation to amend the Constitution. And I made suggestions. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that what needs to be done in this country, what serves this country best, is a hybrid system of government. And that is what is happening even among the neighboring jurisdictions. In Uganda, we have a hybrid system of government. In Tanzania, we have a hybrid system of government. And it is working. It is working very well. So, Mr. Speaker, it is time we revert to the Constitution that we threw without knowing what we were throwing away. Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I beg to support.
Honorable Caroline Ngeleche.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. First of all, Mr. Speaker, today being Women's Day, let me wish all the women in this house and outside this house a happy day. Being a woman, Mr. Speaker, at times is so challenging because we should be all-rounded. We deal with so many issues from our homes, from the parliament, in the streets of Nairobi, in the streets of Iten, where I come from. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to wish each and every woman in this house, especially those women who always wake up to come and legislate for their people. Number two, Mr. Speaker, let me also wish the great people, the great women in Elgeyo Marakwet, a happy Women's Day. However, they are faced with so much challenges, especially in this period of insecurity. They have to endure a lot and persevere a lot during this time of war in their county. I want to just encourage them that let's keep our hope alive, and we believe that the storm will soon be over. Mr. Speaker, there is a special woman today whom you just discussed, and I would have wished to add to the motion, though you never gave me opportunity. Dr. Susan, she comes from Elgeyo Marakwet County. I also wish her a happy Women's Day, and indeed the gift came at the right time. Mr. Speaker, concerning the issue of discussion, I'm not new to it, and I contributed my bit last time. But also, Mr. Speaker, it is never enough, because this is an issue that is really touching on us. And today being the Women's Day, I'll just do a follow-up on my contribution last time onto that gender rule.
Order. If you had really contributed on this motion, then
I'm not.
You should declare, like I did indicate, and then we can allow a member who had not spoken on the same motion,
Mr. Speaker,
to have a bite. So I think if you had spoken on it, thank you. We may move to the
just
next
allow me to add something new, Mr. Speaker, on the discussion. I'm not repeating what I said, Mr. Speaker.
Please, that's taken. So let's have the next member, and that is Honorable Christine Ombaka. Had you spoken on this motion?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Before I contribute, I also want to wish all the women happy International Women's Day. Women work very hard from morning to the next morning. They are always double burdens. They carry the burden of the family. They are working mothers. There are all sorts of work that they do. We celebrate them because they are heroes. In Siaya, I want to say that today I talked to quite a number of them who are celebrating in the stadium, and I want to wish them all the best and to recognize that they are hardworking women and that they are role models and that they are the eye of the community. My contribution to this constitutional amendment will not be a big one, but I just want to highlight the fact that the three funds that we are talking about, CDF, GAF, and the Senate Fund, these are very relevant funds that we really need to entrench in the Constitution, because every member of Parliament needs some funds to control and to also use for various projects that they need to implement in their constituencies. I remember when I first came to this house, 2013, women reps did not have any fund. There was no NGAF. We never had this money for 4 years. NGAF came into existence in 2016. During that time, between 2013 to 2016, I suffered a lot as a woman rep because I had nothing to contribute to the society. I had no money for bursary, no projects I could implement. I looked so weird in the middle of my fellow members of parliament who had CDF. I remember that time, Honorable, the late Jacoyo Midiwo was my member of parliament, and we went to many places together. We worked very, very closely, and he accompanied me to many Harambes, and I also accompanied him to Harambes. One day, he carried 1 million to give to a school who were ready to, who wanted to construct a laboratory. I never had any money on me. I had only 10,000 from my pocket, and I looked so out of place when my colleague Midiwo contributed 1 million, and here I was with with only 10,000. People started wondering, are you not members of parliament together? How come your money, your contribution is so little compared to your colleague Jacoyo Midiwo? It was difficult to explain, but I looked totally embarrassed because my money was far too little compared to what Jacoyo Midiwo was contributing. And that can tell you that if a member of parliament does not have any fund to control or to make use of in the community, that member of parliament has a difficult time to convince the community that he or she is a good leader capable of representing them. When GAF came into 2016, we started seeing the light of day. And we have actually worked very hard as women with this little money. So it needs to be entrenched in the Constitution, because as it is right now, it is really within, it's within a Ministry of Youth and Gender, but anybody can remove it when they want it. It is not safe where it is. So I really support that it must be there. And for this, the position of senators, they don't seem to be visible in the community because they have nothing to offer to people. People don't know what role that the senators play because they are no longer, they don't have CDF, they don't have any kind of fund. So their visibility is minimal. And that's why we have every justification that these funds must be introduced to senators so that they too can be seen to be working, they can use the money for oversight, and they will be more visible that way. Right now, their position is a bit precarious, they are not easily recognized, and people really don't know what their roles are. For us to empower each other as members of parliament, each member of parliament should have something to work with, something to control, something to use for development in the community. When Wananchi out there don't judge you that you can talk in parliament. They judge you with the project that you implement to them. And so funds are very, very important, and whatever fund we agree on, whether it is CDF, whether it is NGAF, or funds for senators, this must be safeguarded, and this must be entrenched in the Constitution. My last point is just on the issue of cabinet ministers coming into parliament to answer questions. They still do come even without this constitution amended. They come not in parliament, but in our committees during budget-making process. We always invite them to come over, and they do come. Sometimes they don't come. They are also a total disappointment in some cases, where they don't turn up, they don't send any reason, and they can only send their representatives. If you bring them into parliament here to answer questions, challenges are going to be there, and we need to be prepared for that. Will they take all the time answering questions, and we will never pass any bills here? They may occupy too much of our time. And the other point I fear is that committees where they should be answering questions will have no role to play. They will be rendered irrelevant at the committee level. The committees will not have much to do. because they will be coming inside Parliament or at the plenary to answer questions. The next issue is it a BBI issue? Can it be clearly explained? If it is BBI, let's implement it to the, let's go along the way and implement what BBI requires, or what we really had proposed in the BBI, because it is neither BBI nor anything else. It's not so clear as to how it is. But challenges are there when we bring cabinet ministers into Parliament to answer questions. Time is going to be consumed too much. We may not be able to have enough time for them. The right time is within a committee, as it is right now. So my view right now is that I cannot think that it is a practical thing. It is challenging. It has to be reviewed very, very seriously for us to conclude that it is the right way to go. Otherwise, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I support the motion.
Honorable Joseph Cherorot.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this time to contribute also on this motion. First of all, Mr. Speaker, let me take time to congratulate our women, because this was Women's International Day, especially our African women who take a lot of time to fend for their children, and also they take a lot of time also to do the house chores. And this one, Mr. Speaker, we give them credit, and I treat them as our heroines. So congratulations to our women because of what they do, and also especially our women in this house who have been participating in the motions, and also they have taken my time also to contribute even for the bills, and also to make sure that they represent their constituencies. Mr. Speaker, we talked a lot about this motion, about the Constitution amendment, and I want to say that in our 2010 Constitution, Mr. Speaker, you remember those days is that we passed the Constitution 2010 while it had some issues, and we used to talk about 20%. So, and I think the Constitution of 2010, Mr. Speaker, we consider the Bill of Rights, and that is why when we have a challenge with the gays and even this LGBTQ that came out the other day, it is because of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, this amendment that has been brought, I want to say that I support, because it will help us, especially the gender rule, which has been a thorn in flesh in this House, Mr. Speaker. It has taken more time, and our women, especially, they have been fighting for it. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful that even His Excellency the President is the one who is pushing for this. And as we know, Mr. Speaker, the other day he talked about when we had the International Women's Day celebration, and he mentioned and he said before the end of the year, we'll make sure that we fulfill, especially this issue of the gender rule in our country and even in the Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think also another thing is about this issue of the CSS coming to the House, Mr. Speaker, to answer questions. This one I can say I support it 100%, because, Mr. Speaker, the CSS are the executive, and in most cases, you find that even through the committees, if we do through the committees, the House committees, Mr. Speaker, it is like having a bureaucracy, and it will take my time to sort out issues that are there, and even questions which pertains actually the executive. On the issue of these funds, Mr. Speaker, the NGCDF, it has been, there's been a lot of problem, and I know it has even derailed the progress and even the development in our country. We have these activists who have been going to court, and Mr. Speaker, when we have it in the Constitution, if it is entrenched in the Constitution, that fund would be protected. Same thing with the GAF and that one of the new proposed Senate oversight money, Mr. Speaker. So I want to say that this one actually will help us, especially to deliver service as members of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, there is also this issue of opposition office, or leader of opposition office. This one, Mr. Speaker, will go a long way in making even those, the opposition leaders, now and even in future, Mr. Speaker, to perform their duties accordingly with a lot of decorum, and also they can be able to discharge their duties effectively, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that for this one, I support, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Engineer Nebat Muriuki, Mbeere South. Try the next microphone just close to you. It's already lit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute in this very important motion. Before I do that, Mr. Speaker, I want to join my colleagues in congratulating and thanking the women of this country during this International Women's Day. In particular, Mr. Speaker, I want to recognize the women of Mbeere South, the constituency which I represent, because of the hard work which they do. Mr. Speaker, sir, Mbeere South is a semi-arid constituency, and especially at this time when the country is experiencing one of the worst droughts in history, the women of Mbeere South have to wake up very early in the morning and make many kilometers, some up to 20 kilometers, to look for water for their family. They have also to feed those families. Mr. Speaker, sir, I really thank and congratulate those women. A family in Mbeere South without a woman is a lonely family. They can easily go without water, they can go without food. But by the grace of God, the women are strong and they are supporting their families. Mr. Speaker, sir, even as I end that, I do request that these women be supported to feed their families through the relief food. On this motion, Mr. Speaker, sir, I really support it. When we talk of elected leaders in this country, whether you are a member of parliament, a women rep, a senator, the people we represent, they don't make the difference. To them, they are voted in, they are best people, and they expect
Order,
support.
Honorable Member, why are you crossing the floor of Parliament? Just go back and do the correct thing, please. That's not how you treat the House. Very well, then come back. You may proceed, Honorable Member, on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I thought it was directed to me.
No.
Thank you. I was saying the people we represent, whether they vote in a women rep or a member of National Assembly or a senator, their expectation, Mr. Speaker, sir, seems to be the same, that when they bring their problems to these people, they should be able to sort them out. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, sir, like we are witnessing even now in this country, when a government takes over, those who don't make it, they start making sure that those who have won, they don't perform. They want to make them ineffective so that they can say they are useless and they should even be removed from office even before their term ends. And this is what has been happening with the NCG, with the national government, CDF. Those who go to court to block it, they know very well that this fund is doing miracles in this country. They know very well that anything which is getting down to the mwananchi is coming through this fund, and it is really transforming the country. But the whole essence behind these litigations is trying to make the government and the members of parliament who have been elected ineffective. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I support that we entrench this fund, the GAF, and even the issue of senators having an oversight fund in the Constitution, so that we may block that loophole of people literally trying to make this country remain backwards, remain underdeveloped just because they have got their own personal interests. If we look at the NGCDF fund, Mr. Speaker, sir, especially at this time when Kenya is experiencing the worst of its times because of the drought, many children will not have gone to school if this fund was not there. This is the fund which has assisted many families to take their children to school when they are having very little money to support the families, because most of the resources in the families now are going to food and almost nothing else. Mr. Speaker, my contribution would be this. We should actually broaden the scope of this fund. There are things which we can't do with this fund because they are saying to be covered under the county, especially health. We know health is a very, very key issue in every family, in every community, and members of parliament find themselves in a very tricky situation when we are being asked to support health issues. We know we do get requests for heavy medical bills, which we are supposed to support. Also, the building of dispensaries and equipping with medicines and other facilities. And our hands are tied because this is said to be a function of the county. Mr. Speaker, this is as we amend this constitution, we also need to broaden the scope of the CDF fund so that it can cover basically all the needs, or most of the needs, which affect the people we represent. Mr. Speaker, coming to the issue of ministers appearing before the House to answer questions, I do support. We all know that when we refer questions to committee members, these committee members have to refer the same to the ministries, and then the ministries have to communicate back to this House through the committee. We know when communication goes like that, Mr. Speaker, sir, information is lost. If we make the ministers to come and represent their ministries and engage the House on whatever issues are arising on a one-to-one, the information will not get lost. However, we cannot make the committees of this House irrelevant. My proposal is that before a minister sits in this House to engage with the members of Parliament, that minister must, of necessity, engage with the committee so that when presenting or answering questions in the House, the minister should be having full backing of the committee. In other words, the minister will only be presenting the issues or answering questions on behalf of the committee, but not coming to engage with the committee members in the House. The committee members should be coming to support the minister, being fully aware of what is being presented in this House. And so I support, but with a rider that the ministers must engage fully with the committee before even appearing into this House. On the two-thirds gender rule, Mr. Speaker, sir, this one, it has proved impossible to achieve through the normal elections. And so, if we can come up with a mechanism of topping it up through the Constitution amendment, Mr. Speaker, sir, this would also give room for representation for the minority communities. Minority communities are not just regional. They are not even, say, in the counties. Even within a constituency, Mr. Speaker, sir, we can have minority communities within a constituency. Minority community can be identified within a county and also even within a region. And so for this two-third gender rule, if it can be put in the Constitution in a manner that top-up can be allowed, then those minority communities will have room to get nominations to come into this House, and this House may have full representation of all the people of this country. And so I support. Mr. Speaker, sir, regarding the leader of opposition, I support the creation of that office in this House so that the opposition may do their business right in the House instead of doing it in the streets. If that had been allowed, Mr. Speaker, sir, the mass action we are talking about or we are hearing about will not be spoken out there. It would have been spoken right in this House and discussed and see what are the pros and cons of having mass action at this particular.
Honorable Peter Lochakapo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this chance and opportunity to add my voice to this motion. On the onset, I want to wish all the women of Kenya a happy Women's Day. Honorable Speaker, I want to support the proposal to amend the Constitution at this particular time, and also hasten to say that by entrenching the National Government Constituencies Development Fund in the Constitution, we'll be getting out of these many court cases that we have seen in the recent past, and this will help and sort those who have been very busy engaging in this kind of activity and extorting people through that process. I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that everybody in this country appreciates that NGCDF has done a lot from inception to date. And NGCDF has brought many parts of this country as closer as possible in terms of development to be equal, because we are sharing almost on an equal basis national government revenue to every constituency, which I think is a good thing. So we have had to put up classrooms. We have also had to put up security installations in terms of police posts, police houses, chief's offices, that has enabled our administrators at the lower level to perform their work well, because CDF has constructed for them offices. So I want to say that ensuring that we move on with CDF without any interference from any quarter is a good idea. So I want to say that is very good. I also want to say that entrenching again the national government affirmative action in the Constitution is also a welcome move. And just like the CDF, I think CAF is also doing a very good work within our constituencies, within our counties, and within our areas. Now, the Senate Oversight Fund, I think this will enable the senators to oversight resources that are sent from the national government to counties without being compromised. As it is now, chances are, to a big extent, and because of limitation of resources, the senators are not able to effectively oversight whatever resources may or has been appropriated to counties. So by creating an oversight fund for senators, I think they will be empowered, they will be facilitated, and they will have no excuse while oversighting whatever resources the counties will be receiving. So I think this is a good idea, and I support that. Honorable Speaker, we have attempted on very many occasions to pass the two-thirds gender principle in this House. And on all those occasions, we have not succeeded. So now that there is a proposal to amend the Constitution so that we can effectively achieve the two-thirds through a proposed formula, I think this is a welcome idea, and we are now going to sort out what we have not been able to sort out for very many years. Probably for the last maybe 10 years, we have not been able to sort out this, and therefore it is important that all of us support this proposal so that we achieve the two-thirds gender rule in this House. Changing of the standing orders, so that we have cabinet secretaries come and answer questions that are of concern or affecting the people of Kenya, I think it's also a good idea. Many a times when cabinet secretaries appear before committees, they just answer the question as is presented to them. Any follow-up questions, sometimes they may not be prepared to answer them. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that by the mere fact that cabinet secretaries will know that they are appearing before this House will make them prepare adequately and will ensure that each cabinet secretary knows so much about his ministry, so that should there be follow-up questions, that cabinet secretary should be more than prepared to answer them appropriately while in this House. Many a times when committee chairs are taken to task over matters in terms of follow-up questions on questions that have been raised in this House, they have never been able to answer them, and they will always require time, that let them be given time as they consult. But this time now, when the cabinet secretary, him or herself, will be here, I think some of these things will be addressed on the floor of this House and almost immediately. So I want to say, I think that's a very good idea. And that also, Honorable Speaker, tells you how much this government is willing to be accountable to the people of Kenya. By the cabinet secretaries appearing here, the government that has nothing to fear in terms of being accountable to the people of this republic. And I think that's something that is welcome. Finally, Honorable Speaker, the proposal to create the office of leader of official opposition, I think is a good thing. So that this office is facilitated, is financed through public funds. And therefore, whenever the official opposition leader would want to undertake programs, projects, or even do anything, we know where we can find him. So that it's not now like the current situation now, where you may not really know even if you wanted to engage, where would you find him? And I want to believe that now that that office will be facilitated and will be financed through public funds, it will again be more accountable, because the people of Kenya will again demand for accountability from that office. Because any office that is enjoying the benefits of being financed through public resources must also be accountable. So I think we will make that office of leader of official opposition to be a bit even more accountable to the people of Kenya, and to keep the government in place, in check, which is a good thing. I think we require that, so that everybody is on their toes and everybody does or do what is required of them. So, Honorable Speaker, with that, I support this motion. Thank you very much.
Okay. Honorable Charo Kazungu is in the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this motion. But before that, I also join my colleagues in wishing the women of Kenya a happy International Women's Day. And a special mention goes to the women of Ganze, who are very hardworking, and they have borne the brunt of all the hard life that they're experiencing in Ganze because of the high levels of poverty there, and also the effects of the current drought. The women of Ganze are very resilient because they wake up every morning, walk long distances to look for water. They do all kinds of manual jobs to fend for their families. In all this, they have remained courageous, they have remained resilient, and they have maintained decorum. So a special mention goes out to them as they celebrate this International Women's Day. Coming back to the motion, I want to support this motion because it has come in at a very timely, or it has come in very timely. CDF has done a lot of wonders in the constituencies. There are a lot of projects that have been done and completed through the CDF. And as my colleagues have said, many regions in this country has been brought to power because of this fund. But there are many busybodies out there who have all this time fought this fund. And I think they are doing this for their own selfish benefits. So the fund has remained very vulnerable, and it's high time as Parliament that we entrench it in the Constitution so that we can cushion it from this kind of busybodies. We have so many projects that are done through this fund that are not funded, maybe through the counties, because one of the arguments that have been fronted by those people who are fighting it are saying that this fund should go to the counties. But we know that according to Schedule 4 of the Constitution, there are those functions that were never devolved. And it is these functions that are being taken care of by the CDF fund right now. So once this fund goes to the counties, as these people are demanding, it means that they will have no funds to take care of these functions that were never devolved. Like in the education sector, counties only fund the pre-primary education. But primary school all the way to tertiary institutions, these are funded by, this can be funded through the CDF. We have seen a lot of students also benefiting out of the CDF through the bursary, the CDF bursaries. In an area like Ganze, where I come from, where the poverty levels are very high, majority of the people there depend on CDF bursaries to take their kids to school. So once this is removed, then it means many people are not going to access education. So I support the idea that this fund needs to be entrenched in the Constitution so that we can protect it for posterity. Again, the issue of NGAF, the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, I think this is a fund that has brought a lot of dignity also to the office of the Women Rep. Because I remember this is an office that used to be ridiculed by a lot of people, and there were some that were saying it is like women reps are flower girls of the MPs and their governors, but there's nothing that they are doing. So having this kitty to take care of the functions of the Women Rep office, I think it is also a timely thing to do so that the women also can be able to deliver services to the Wananchi going forward. The Senate Oversight Fund I also support, and I support it because having worked in the counties before I joined Parliament, I know that there is need for Senate to oversight what is happening in the counties. Many a times the senators depend or they serve at the mercy of the governors to provide oversight. And I'm not intending to impute any improper motives, but it is very easy for the governors maybe to compromise the senators, and as a result, maybe not be able to provide oversight as they are required. But if they have a fund of their own, they can come up with their own programs without involving the governors. They can be able to visit these counties and follow up on the monies that were sent there by the national government. And in doing so, I think it is going to bring a lot of value to the monies that are sent there, because I know governors, once they know that senators can come there without relying on them for maybe facilitation and other things, then I think a lot of good work is going to happen at the counties, and this will be beneficial to this country. On the issue of cabinet secretaries coming to the floor of the House to answer questions, I think this is also a very good idea, because as it is right now, it is the committee chairman who take responsibility of answering questions in this House. But most of the answers that are given here are kind of generic, and they are not satisfactory to most of the members. But again, the members, they have no avenue to ask further questions, because it will take maybe another 2-3 weeks for them to get an answer to a supplementary question. But once these cabinet secretaries come to this House, then I think because they will be prepared enough for the questions, they're going to give satisfactory answers. And if there are any questions or follow-up questions that are going to come up from the members, it will be easy for the CS to maybe to give those answers as well. So I support the idea that these CSs need to come to the House to answer questions from the MPs. On the issue of gender role, this has been an elusive issue in this House. I think there has been many attempts by this House to crack this rule, but it has not been. They have not been able to do it. And now I think this amendment gives a formula on how to achieve the 2/3 gender rule in the House. And it's not like beginning here in this House, because I know in the counties it has happened. We have been having gender top-ups in the counties. So I think we can also do it here so that we can once and for all get a solution to this kind of a problem. The only issue here, maybe it's a complication that has been brought about by the Supreme Court when they allowed the issue of LGBTQ. So you see now they kind of redefine the issue of gender once that rule is approved in this country, and I think this is the reason why we need this parliament to refuse the ruling by the Supreme Court. It is because now they have kind of redefined the word gender, because we used to know gender as either male or female. But now with this new ruling that came into being, it means now gender has expanded. We have male, female, we have the gays, we have the lesbians, we have the queer, and all those things. So that means now, I don't know how we are going to achieve the 2/3 gender rule again, because now it's not about men and women again, but the scope of gender has been expanded. So I think this is another reason why we need as a parliament to make sure that that ruling does not come into effect in this country. Finally, on the issue of the office of the opposition, I want also to support that. I think government needs to be oversighted, and the best person to oversight a government is the run-up, the person who becomes a run-up in an election. So once this person is facilitated using government funds, I know he's going to keep the government in power in toes, and this good for the running of the country, because it provides enough oversight, and this is going to be of benefit to the people of the country at large. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hon John Kiragu, Member of Parliament, Limuru.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute. First of all, I want to salute the women of this nation, and particularly I want to give my honor to my mom and my wife and to my 2 daughters, and also not to forget the great women of Limuru who are the major engine of development in our constituency. I will not also not forget the 2 ladies, First Lady and Second Lady, who have led this nation into times of prayers. And as a God-fearing nation, we know that God will come through for us, even at a time like this. Mr. Speaker, I would like to start by saying that I would like to support this motion, particularly on this Women's Day. On the matter of gender rule, I would like to support and to say that it is about time that we finalize on this matter. This issue has been there for some time, and the President has provided a very simple formula of how we can achieve this. And I think the women of this nation really need to be supported in this matter. We know their contribution. We know how important the women have been in this nation, and we also need to have the rule achieved, particularly in this House. Mr. Speaker, I rise also to support the anchoring through our constitution, the FAD and national government CDF, the GAF, and Senate oversight. Mr. Speaker, as a person who have been in this parliament before, in the 11th parliament, I saw what CDF can do. During that time, about 5 years, we in Limuru, we were able to establish 5 secular schools in areas that transition to high school was a very difficult thing. We know that the challenges are there for improving education, improving security, and this fund helps a lot in solving this matter. But, Mr. Speaker, we know not everybody has been happy of the fact that this national government CDF works, it is practical, it achieves results. People have been fighting. We know that there are people who are anti-development, people who are jealous, people who think that the poor should not have an opportunity to move themselves up. But this fund has helped this nation to particularly pick those people who are at the bottom of the economic ladder to move themselves up and be people who will contribute a lot in this country. Last 2 weeks, after even having issued bursaries in Limuru to about 13,000 children, we still had a challenge of not being able to help many others who could not even have money to enroll themselves for Form 1. And Mr. Speaker, I had to organize a marathon to raise more funds. And through this marathon, we were able to take another 50 kids who are at home. It pains me a lot to hear people who say, just because that this thing is not in, the fund is not in the Constitution, it is not good. Mr. Speaker, it should be put in the Constitution so that those enemies of the poor people, they will have nothing else to hinge the argument on. So, Mr. Speaker, I also support the fund for GAF because we know that it will help also on matter of dealing with the special needs and also reaching out to the very people that we want to help, those people who are not as well off like others. And for the Senate, Mr. Speaker, I think it is good that there is an oversight fund so that the senators can be able to oversight what the senators do on the ground. Mr. Speaker, if you go around in most of the counties, to be honest, most of what you see is the projects from the national government CDF. And the Senate would help to also push the governor so that more money for development is seen on the ground. Mr. Speaker, I also stand to support the revision of the standing order to allow the cabinet to come to the floor of this House. We know that this will help us in the House to get good answers to the questions that we raised through the committees. We know that it will be a time for us also to evaluate the performance of the cabinet as it comes to answer the questions. We know that most of the answers given through the committees, sometimes they are not serious because they know that the cabinet secretaries may not appear sometimes to the members of the committee. But for those selective questions that the House will find necessary for the cabinet secretary to come and answer on this floor, Mr. Speaker, it will help us be able to provide better oversight. Mr. Speaker, there is the issue of the office of the leader of the opposition. I think it's a good idea. I think anybody who will serve in the opposition will be facilitated. They will have a research team to be able to address the issues that they need to bring up to the government. Mr. Speaker, I think sometimes when you listen to the rallies and people shouting in the rallies and talking about what the government is doing and not doing, sometimes you find that it's not researched, it's not factual, but with an office and with the facilitation, I believe that office will help enhance the democracy in this country. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity. I say that I support the motion. Thank you.
Honorable Fabian Muli, MP Kabondo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving this opportunity to join my colleagues to deliberate on this bill. Honorable Speaker, let me start by congratulating the women of this country, especially from my constituents all the way to the Kenyan jurisdiction, and I wish all the best as they celebrate their day. Honorable Speaker, as we go to this bill, from onset, you see CDF has been very contentious in this country. Many people feel CDF is meant for members of parliament, but I want to put it clearly, CDF is meant for Kenyans. It is the money from taxpayers of this country, and it is the money which most likely is used to pay the school fees of vulnerables. If you see from 203 Act of CDF, the CDF was getting 2.5. The CDF grow up to 206 Act, which we are getting 3.5. In 2013 Act, that is the Act which have been contested in the court. That's where you see now our president look it like a good idea for it to be in the Constitution. The CDF today is the money which, when we go to campaign, we give value to people or things we promise. If you see any political seat, either MCA, governor, MP, senators, people expect a value of the vote they did. The CDF is the money which has been used by members of parliament to give people's value. If you check the document how it's organized, you get there is money for administration within the constitution, that is the security. You get there is money for sports, for the constituency. You get there is money for environment. There is money for infrastructure, for education. But also, Honorable Speaker, we need to remember the church. We need to consider in CDF maybe 0.5% we consider religion. We can put religion maybe to go to church or mosque. I'm saying that because CDF is function for the Kenyan community. So people should not feel that a CDF is made for members of parliament. And that's why I stand here and say that it is very important the CDF to be haggard in the constitution, and the whole that vote should be mentioned. If the vote for administration, vote for environment, vote for health, for security, we should mention the amount which goes as per the policy document of the schedule of the CDF. And I support the proposal from our president, what he has said. Our Speaker, there is another bill for opposition leader to be haggard, to be considered in some funding and his program. Our Speaker, we need to understand this. It is very important to oppose, but we need to oppose objectively. We don't need just to say that I'm opposing you because I was competing with you. In this country, we need to grow a democracy which is progressive. If today you are doing the right thing, I support you. If you are doing the wrong thing, I oppose you. And that's what we call ideological thinking in terms of democracy. In today's, we can say that the other team, Azimio, they got almost 5 million votes. These people need an office. The people who voted that line need an office somewhere where they can be heard, their cry can be seen. Every Kenyan who is in the office, who is not in the office, need to enjoy the right of this jurisdiction. So that's why we are saying an office of opposition leader should have funds. And I'm going to challenge also the people in Azimio. They should not feel like this fund is made for them. This fund is made for the person who becomes number 2 in election or presidential election. And most likely this bill may become in practice after 2027. And I'm sure our party, GDDP, will be number 2. So I might be actually campaigning for money for my party. So I'm not seeing them, they'll be number 2 anymore. I know we'll be number 1, I know they won't be number 2. So they should not feel that we are making money for them. We are making money for Kenyans who are contesting for presidential seats. There's the one who come number 1, there's the one who come number 2, and the one who come number 3. So we are talking about number 2. We are not specific, this group will come. Because also we also party leaders, we're also willing to challenge to come number 1 or number 2. So we need, when we come number 2, we need to have mobilization funds. We need to meet our supporters. We need to oversight the government. And we need also to show the move of democracy of this country. The other thing which we need to move as a country in terms of election and understanding. We should not be thinking about most likely I want to put speaker on this house. This house we have majority leader and a minority leader. This house has no opposition leader. As much as we are going to make this bill, we have to consider how this house need to be organized. So you must consider the standing orders. The standing orders, you need to consider that maybe to put majority leader to be the leader in the government and then opposition leader to be sitting in this house. Because I don't see how now we are going to facilitate somebody in our office somewhere who is leading other guys in the house when he's not leading them inside the house. So we need to consider in our standing orders, we need to consider opposition leader, not only to be coming to address the house the 1 year, but to give him an opportunity somewhere to be sitting in this house. Also on the issues of putting the cabinet secretary to be coming to this house, not only thinking cabinet secretary to coming to this house, if you see what has happened recently, the members of parliament, they have given opportunity to serve as cabinet secretaries. Now, we have pushed these people to resign their office, given IBC a lot of time, and their voters' ground to go again to vote for other leaders. We need to consider a member of parliament or a senator can be a cabinet secretary. Because if they are coming in the house, you just come in the house to be asked the question. What is that idea which, if today I remember the question instead of keeping to write and tell you to come back, if I remember the question, when you're in the house, I can keep you asking. So I'm thinking as we go for this bill, I support this bill the way it come, but I'm thinking the way it is because we might end up doing constitutional review on some of this bill proposed. We need to consider members of parliament and senates to be cabinet secretaries. Instead of you appoint, you get a member of parliament to become a cabinet secretary, then again you tell the constitution to go for election, you start putting IBC to spend a lot of money. People in the constitution, you spend their time telling to go to vote. Also, the president has shown a goodwill, a hope to our senators. If you see a senator is somebody who is leading a whole count, in many cases like Machakos count, we have 9 constituencies. This person will close all the logistics to campaign. All the logistics, it promotes people's, I can build a class, I can build a cooperative society, and so support this direction. But when it comes to do it as no funds, so that's why we need to consider to give value in that seat of Senate. That house need to be given value, at least. When a senator is closing in between, can say that I can give you bursary, I can do this. So we need to consider that value within the senators. Not forgetting that today is a Women's Day. The president has come with what we call arithmetics to show us it can be done through arithmetics to give this house to that gender, to give the government offices, to give the Senate. That's a bill which you don't need to debate about it. It's just a matter of supporting it. Honorable Speaker, not forgetting the issue of when we are also speaking about giving cabinet secretary the chance to come to this house. We need to consider some functions. There are some functions which we give to cabinet secretaries and also we send them to devote, like health. It is showing that in this country, the current government has failed to organize the health sector. So the health sector, when we are doing this bill, we need to consider health sector to come fully to the national government to save our Kenyans from suffering to having hospitals, no medicine, no proper control of the doctors. We don't have the hospital categorization accordingly. So, Honorable Speaker, with those few remarks, I support. Thank you very much.
Honorable Aden Mohammed, you want to speak on this? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me join my colleagues also in wishing our ladies and our women on this International Women's Day week wishing them well and saying that we support you and we are with you in all your endeavors. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the 2/3 gender rule, I think that is a no-brainer. Our Constitution has already ordained that we should have the 2/3 gender rule. That we haven't done up to today is an indictment on this Parliament and on this National Assembly. The Supreme Court in the last session has even said that this House is unconstitutional. So it is a high time, and they had asked the President actually to resolve it. So it is the high time that as a National Assembly and as Parliament, we pass the 2/3 gender rule and we allow at least each gender to be represented either in 2/3 or a third. So I urge my colleagues, both in the National Assembly and in the Senate, to pass this rule. The Senate, I don't think they have that problem, but our constitutional amendment, let us pass this gender rule. As far as the leader of the opposition is concerned, I think it is something up for debate that we do
Honorable
have.
Dagala, what's your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I rise to pursuant standing order number 35-1 to claim that there is no quorum in this House, Mr. Speaker, sir. And before you make your judgment, I wish to wish all Kenyan women Happy International Day.
Well, Sergeant at Arms, could you please ring the bell for 10 minutes?
Mr. Speaker, should I proceed or I wait for the bell?
Please wait. Honorable members, the bell has been rung for 10 minutes, and I can confirm that there's no quorum in the House. Honorable members, and the time being 5:46 p.m., this House stands adjourned until tomorrow, Thursday, 9th March 2023 at 2:30 p.m.
Join Tell Pastors for live classes about the life of Jesus. Theological depth plus practical application. Learn the Tell method, a simple way to study Scripture. Live classes are engaging and interactive. Join a global community of believers who are passionate about sharing their faith with others. Click the link to begin Course 1, Spiritual Healing, online right now. Visit tellnetwork.org to learn more.
Maria Shekinah Basiki. Tiakena Maria Kamaria Shekinah Basiki Seke. We are Kisha to Kenya Maso to Kananisa. Yeah.